what we'll talk about today is we'll focus on tokens and how that relates to smart contract. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll have some idea of what tokens are and what smart contracts are. And we'll also go into some use cases so you can start to visualize what people mean when they say a token or a smart contract. Why do we care? So tokens are, you can think of them like a fundamental building block of the incentive model of blockchain. So they're a very core part of blockchain. And if you get rid of the token, you're messing around with the economic model, and this will change the fundamentals. Of course, we're interested in blockchain because we're looking into the future of the internet, Web3. So to understand blockchain, to understand how Web3 will work, you need to have some understanding of tokens as well. So just some stats that are relevant for the Philippines. So the Philippine crypto adoption, another word for when people say crypto, they quite often mean a token that is on a blockchain, a native token. So the crypto adoption in the Philippines is currently the 5th highest in the world, doing really well. And then 32% of people with a crypto actually hold something called an NFT. So you might have heard of these. I'll tell you a bit more about it later in the talk, what an NFT exactly is. Let's go into what a token is. A token is not a new concept. It's been around for a very long time. So the first tokens that people used were grain or wheat. They were used as a representation of some value. So rather than bartering, where you would have to find something that you have something that someone else wants, and they have something that you want, and you can do a direct exchange, people started to introduce tokens to represent a value that has value in multiple different places. And then you start to see things like transport tokens, so train tickets or your boarding pass when you came over here. That's an example of a token. And then later on, we also have arcade tokens, so whether that's a casino chip or digital tokens is quite a new innovation. For example, if you've ever had a boarding pass on your phone, for example, that's a type of digital token. So a token is a representation of value. Very specifically, it's a representation. So a token doesn't have intrinsic value. It has value because it represents something that does. And this is relevant for later. So a token, you can think of it as a contract where it's representing rights or obligations. So, your boarding pass, if you go to the gate, you know that they have an obligation to let you on the plane. So why do we care? Well, imagine a world without tokens. We'd have to go back to that bartering system. It becomes very complex. Tokens are a more efficient way of representing and exchanging value. And now we have blockchain tokens as the most recent type of token. And this introduces a completely new model again. So, bartering peer-to-peer, tokens have this third-party element. Before blockchain, we had this third party, so the plane company, they are the ones that are able to validate your ticket. Now we have blockchain where you can go to another party. You don't need to have a third-party interaction to make an exchange. So Bitcoin, in some ways, it reintroduces this peer-to-peer element that we got rid of when we had tokens before. Now we have the peer-to-peer mechanism that is reintroduced. I imagine lots of people have heard about NFTs. It's already come up a few times today. So I'm going to decode what an NFT is. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. So what does fungibility mean? Fungibility is about how it represents the uniqueness of a token or how non-unique a token is. So if we have a fungible token, then the tokens have equal value and they're able to interchange. You can interchange them with other tokens of the same type. So an example is a Bitcoin token, or even just a coin that you have. That's a type of fungible token. And then NFTs, a non-fungible token, those tokens are unique. So it has some unique identifier. A good example of that is artwork or maybe a land deed. So you don't have an exact exchange of an NFT with another token. So just going through some small example of the benefits that we can get by using blockchain to represent tokens. If we take an example of a piece of artwork, we can choose to put this token on chain that represents that artwork. So there's an element, the blockchain itself does not provide an intrinsic proof of ownership or a proof of authenticity. So what you have, you need this extra layer that has the proof of authenticity, whether that's certificate authority or a trusted third party. So they're able to generate token, put it on a blockchain, and you can validate the authenticity. And because it's on chain, you're certain the correct person who owns this token is able to access it being on chain. It also enables instant peer-to-peer exchange, as we touched upon in the last slide. So if someone wants to transfer that token to someone else, you can use blockchain very easily. You don't have to go back to the original authenticator of the token. You can very easily exchange them peer-to-peer. Also an immutable audit trail. So if you then needed to do a tax return, for example, you could show them the proof of interaction on chain, and an auditor will be able to trust that information. There's some transparency that's going on. We talk about tokens. Now, how does that relate to smart contracts? So if you remember on the slide about tokens where I said a token is a contract. So when we're talking about smart contract, it's a way to put a physical contract on chain. This is kind of the language that we're using to represent a contract on the blockchain. So it offers transparency, so everyone can see this contract. It also offers immutability. No one can change the details of the contract. And then this is the one that I find really interesting. You can also introduce some automation. So say if you have a train ticket, let's use a train ticket example again, where you buy a ticket that's valid for a whole day. Blockchain allows you to only spend that ticket during that day if you have a fixed day. But if you try to spend it another day, then blockchain will just not allow it. It won't even let you attempt to make that transaction. And then with all these properties, you have the additional benefit that can then help to reduce the fraud. The first use case I'd like to go through is crowdfunding. So we can imagine we've got a party who wants to open a bakery. Maybe they own a cake business and they want to open a physical shop, but they don't yet have enough money to purchase the property. What this party is able to do is use a blockchain to generate tokens on chain that represent shares of the business. And then they're very easily able to, you can imagine it like fractionalizing the business, or equivalently shares. It's just like shares. These tokens might represent, it might have some percentage of profits, maybe some voting rights, or even you could imagine a discount on items if you go into that shop. Using blockchain, this party can generate 100 and then decide to sell 10 of them. And they're able to hold on to 90, and then they can sell 10, and they get lots of benefits such as liquidity, social engagement, and then also investors get their own benefits. They're able to hold some shares of a company. So I think this is quite a nice example of something that exists already, and it can be made more efficient on chain. But the next one I find particularly interesting. I think this is a new use case that blockchain enables. So instead of a shop, let's say that the chef, he has a house and he runs into some troubles and he wants to get a bit of liquidity. He doesn't want to sell his home. Of course, that would be a worst case scenario. And using blockchain, he's able to fractionalize the ownership of his property. He can get some liquidity out of that property without having to lose his house. And the thing I like about this one is that it can open up the market of property ownership to more people. So say not everyone has the ability to buy a whole house. They now can have this option to just own a fraction of a house, and it can let them on the ladder. Music royalties. So this is a good example of small-time artists who put a lot of effort into creating something that feels really personal to them, but then don't necessarily always get benefit of the effort that they put into it. So you could imagine a similar scenario where they create an album and they sell some ownership rights of that album, but you can also introduce more possibilities, like maybe they want to give a few royalties to the drummer who helped them make the album, or the producer. So you can start to imagine that blockchain can really introduces this transparency and immutability, that everyone kind of removes the worry of having to trust everyone. You can start to distribute assets in a way that everyone feels is fair. So hopefully that has given you some idea of what tokens are, how smart contracts relate to that. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be around for the 2 days. I'm very happy to answer them. Thank you.